Hello, my good friends. How are you today? May God bless you all. I will not introduce anything. You guys watch the video and feel it, then let's evaluate together. The Chicago skyline glittered under a velvet night, its towering skyscrapers casting long shadows over the winding river below. Sterling Heights, a beacon of luxury in the heart of downtown, stood proud with its marble floors, gold-trimmed chandeliers, and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the city like a painting. Inside, the hum of wealth pulsed, bellhops gliding silently, guests in tailored suits sipping martinis, and the faint jazz notes drifting from the rooftop lounge. But for Amara Coleman, the glamour was just a backdrop. She pushed her cleaning cart through the service corridor, her sneakers squeaking faintly on the polished floor, her mind far from the glitz. Amara, 32, was a striking woman, her deep brown skin glowing under the fluorescent lights, her tightly coiled hair pulled into a high bun. Her eyes, a rich hazel, burned with a quiet fire, a mix of determination and buried pain. She wore the standard gray uniform of Sterling Heights' housekeeping staff, but it couldn't hide the strength in her posture, or the sharp intelligence in her glance. 5 years ago, she'd been a rising star at Coleman Innovations, a tech empire built by her father, Marcus Coleman. She was his heir, his pride, until her half-sister Lena and stepmother Vivian tore it all away. They'd framed her, disgraced her, and worst of all, taken her newborn son, Miles. Now, Amara was back in Chicago, hiding in plain sight, her heart set on two things: finding Miles and reclaiming her father's legacy. The cart rattled as she turned a corner, her hands steady despite the storm in her chest. Every day at Sterling Heights was a step closer to answers. She'd learned to hack in Atlanta, where she'd raised her daughter Isabel in a cramped apartment filled with love and grit. Those skills had uncovered a lead. Coleman Innovations was tangled with Sterling Enterprises, the conglomerate that owned this hotel. If she could get close to the top, to Nathan Sterling himself, she might find the truth. But trust was a luxury she couldn't afford, not after what Lena and Vivian had done. Amara paused outside the executive suite, checking her schedule. The room was marked empty, reserved for Nathan Sterling, the elusive CEO who rarely stayed overnight. She swiped her keycard, the door clicking open, and stepped inside. The suite was a world of its own: plush cream carpets, a mahogany desk, and a view of the Chicago River that stole her breath. The air smelled of cedar and leather, a stark contrast to the bleach and pine of her cleaning supplies. She set her cart by the door and began her routine, wiping down surfaces with practiced efficiency. As she reached for a rag, her elbow bumped a coffee mug on the desk. It tipped, dark liquid splashing across a stack of papers and onto a crisp white shirt draped over the chair. Amara froze, her heart lurching. "Damn it," she muttered, grabbing a towel to blot the mess. The papers were proposals for something called Skyline, a massive urban tech project. She scanned them briefly, blueprints, budgets, names she didn't recognize, before the door to the adjoining bathroom swung open. Nathan Sterling stood there, all 6 feet of him, his dark hair damp from a shower, a towel slung low around his hips. His blue eyes, sharp as cut glass, locked onto her. Amara's breath caught, her towel slipping from her hand. He was lean and muscled, his presence filling the room like a storm cloud. For a moment, neither moved, the air thick with tension. Then Nathan's gaze flicked to the coffee-stained shirt and his jaw tightened. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, his voice low, controlled, but edged with irritation. Amara snapped out of her daze, her cheeks burning. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Sterling. I thought the suite was empty." She gestured to the mess. "I'll clean this up. I didn't mean... Save it." He crossed the room in 3 strides, picking up the shirt. The towel shifted slightly, and Amara averted her eyes, her pulse racing. Nathan tossed the shirt onto the desk and grabbed a fresh one from a closet, his movements precise. As he buttoned it, he studied her, his expression unreadable. "You're new. Who are you?" "Amara Coleman, housekeeping," she said, forcing her voice to stay steady. She gripped the cart like a lifeline, her knuckles whitening. "It was an accident. I'll pay for the shirt." He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of amusement breaking through his icy demeanor. "You think I need your money?" He stepped closer, his cologne, a mix of cedar and citrus, hitting her senses. "What I need is people who don't barge into my suite and ruin my day." Amara bristled, her pride flaring. "I didn't barge in. The schedule said this room was clear. Maybe check your own system before you start throwing shade." The words slipped out before she could stop them, and she braced for a reprimand. Nathan paused, his eyes narrowing. For a second, she thought he'd fire her on the spot. Instead, a faint smirk tugged at his lips. Bold. Most people would be groveling by now. "I'm not most people," Amara shot back, meeting his gaze. Her heart pounded, but she refused to look away. There was something in his eyes, curiosity, maybe even respect, that threw her off balance. "Clearly." He turned away, slipping on a blazer. "Fix the mess and get out. I've got a meeting in 10. Amara nodded, her hands moving quickly to mop up the coffee. As Nathan grabbed his briefcase and headed for the door, he glanced back. "Don't make a habit of this, Amara Coleman." The door clicked shut, and Amara exhaled, her legs trembling. She cursed herself for mouthing off. She couldn't afford to lose this job, not when it was her only way into Sterling Enterprises. But Nathan's smirk lingered in her mind, along with the way his eyes had held hers, like he saw more than just a cleaner. She shook it off, focusing on the papers she'd glimpsed. Skyline was big, and if Coleman Innovations was involved, it could lead her to Lena and Vivian, and maybe to Miles. She finished cleaning, her mind racing. Back in the service corridor, she leaned against the wall, closing her eyes. The memory of Miles flooded her, his tiny hands, his soft coos, the star-shaped birthmark on his neck. 5 years ago, Lena and Vivian had drugged her at a gala, left her in a stranger's bed, and used her pregnancy to ruin her. She'd given birth to twins, Miles and Isabel, but days later, Miles was gone, taken by someone powerful. The note left behind had mentioned the Sterlings, and now she was here, so close yet so far. Her shift ended at midnight, and Amara rode the L train back to Englewood, the city's lights blurring outside the window. Her apartment was small, the walls covered with Isabel's crayon drawings and photos of better days. She pulled a worn picture from her pocket. Isabel, 4 years old, grinning with her braids swinging. Amara's heart ached. Isabel was safe with a friend in Atlanta, but every day apart felt like a knife. She tucked the photo away and opened her laptop, her fingers flying over the keys as she hacked into Sterling's guest records. Nothing on Miles yet, but she wasn't giving up. The next evening, Amara was back at Sterling Heights, her cart loaded with fresh towels. The hotel was buzzing with a charity event in the grand ballroom, a sea of glittering gowns and tuxedos. She slipped into the service entrance, her eyes scanning the crowd. That's when she saw him. A boy, about 5, stood by the dessert table, his dark curls falling into his eyes. He clutched a toy truck, his small frame dwarfed by the adults around him. Amara's breath hitched. She stepped closer, her cart forgotten, her eyes locked on his neck. There it was, a star-shaped birthmark, faint but unmistakable. Miles, her son. Her knees buckled, and she gripped a nearby table to steady herself. Tears stung her eyes as memories crashed over her. The hospital room, his tiny fingers curling around hers, the empty crib where he'd been. Miles looked up, his hazel eyes meeting hers for a fleeting moment, and Amara's heart shattered. He was here, alive, but he didn't know her. A woman approached the boy, her blonde hair sleek, her designer dress screaming wealth. Olivia Harper, daughter of Gerald Harper, Sterling's biggest rival. Olivia knelt, her voice sharp. "Miles, stop fidgeting. You're embarrassing me." The boy flinched, and Amara's fists clenched. Every instinct screamed to run to him, to scoop him up and never let go. But she couldn't, not yet. She didn't know why the Harpers had him, or how deep their power ran. Amara forced herself to turn away, her chest heaving. She pushed her cart to the staff room, her hands shaking as she sank onto a bench. The image of Miles, his quiet eyes, his small hands, burned in her mind. She pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over a contact. Jamal, her childhood friend and a lawyer in Englewood, had offered to help. She needed him now, but calling meant risking everything. "Hey, you okay?" A co-worker, Tanya, leaned in, her voice soft. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Amara forced a smile, wiping her eyes. "Just tired. Long night." Tanya handed her a bottle of water. "You're on the VIP floor tomorrow. Sterling's hosting a meeting, so don't screw it up." Amara nodded, her mind elsewhere. The VIP floor meant access to Nathan, to records, to answers. She thought of his smirk, the way he challenged her. He was a puzzle, cold, powerful, but something about him felt human. She couldn't trust him, not when his family might be tied to Miles's disappearance, but she couldn't avoid him either. Back at her apartment, Amara stood before her mirror, her reflection a mix of exhaustion and resolve. She touched the scar on her wrist, a reminder of the night Lena and Vivian had destroyed her. "Miles, Mom's coming for you," she whispered, her voice steel. She didn't know what Nathan Sterling was hiding, but she'd find out. She'd tear down every wall, every lie, to bring her son home. The Chicago wind howled outside, carrying the city's restless pulse. Amara slipped into bed, her dreams filled with Miles' face and Nathan's piercing eyes. Tomorrow she'd step closer to the truth, even if it meant walking through fire. Hey, you're loving Amara's fight for her son, right? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Who do you think Nathan really is? Let's unravel this together. The hum of Chicago's downtown pulsed through Sterling Heights, where the morning sun glinted off glass towers and cast long shadows over the river. Inside the hotel, Amara Coleman moved with purpose, her cleaning cart a familiar shield as she navigated the polished corridors. Her hazel eyes, sharp with resolve, hid the storm brewing inside. Last night's glimpse of Miles, her son, alive with his star-shaped birthmark, had lit a fire in her chest. He was here, under the same roof, but trapped in the grip of Olivia Harper, a woman whose coldness made Amara's blood boil. Every step she took now was for him, even if it meant dancing on the edge of danger. Amara's shift was grueling, her hands scrubbing marble counters and folding crisp linens, but her mind was elsewhere. Miles's quiet face haunted her, his flinch under Olivia's sharp words replaying like a bad song. She needed to get closer, to learn why the Harpers had him and how Sterling Enterprises fit into the puzzle. Her hacking had uncovered a thread. Coleman Innovations, her father's tech empire, was linked to Sterling through the Skyline Project, a futuristic urban development that promised to reshape Chicago. If she could dig deeper, she might find Lena and Vivian's fingerprints and maybe a path to Miles. As she pushed her cart toward the VIP floor, a co-worker, Tanya, caught up, her braids bouncing. "Girl, you hear? Big meeting upstairs. Nathan Sterling's running it and they're short-staffed. They're pulling you in to take notes." Amara's pulse quickened. "Me? I'm housekeeping, not a secretary." Tanya grinned. "Guess you impressed someone. Don't mess it up, Amara. That's your shot to shine." Amara nodded, her mind racing. The VIP floor meant access to Nathan, to secrets. She smoothed her uniform, wishing for something sharper than gray polyester, and headed to the conference room. The space was sleek, with a long glass table and a view of the city that stretched to the horizon. Executives in tailored suits murmured, their laptops glowing with Skyline's blueprints. Nathan stood at the head, his dark hair neat, his blue eyes scanning the room. When he saw Amara, his gaze lingered, a flicker of recognition passing between them. "Ms. Coleman," he said, his voice smooth but firm. "You're on notes. Keep up." She nodded, grabbing a tablet and settling at the table's edge. The meeting was a whirlwind, talk of budgets, timelines, and tech integrations. Amara's fingers flew over the tablet, but her ears caught something else. A heated exchange about supply chains. One exec, a wiry man named Kessler, pushed for a cheaper materials vendor tied to Harper Industries. Nathan shut it down, his tone icy. "We're not cutting corners. Skyline's my legacy, not a cash grab." Amara's mind sparked. Harper Industries. Olivia's family. If they were pushing shady deals, it could tie back to Miles. She typed faster, her heart pounding. When the meeting ended, Nathan approached, his blazer unbuttoned. "You didn't miss a word. Impressive." She met his eyes, her voice steady. "I'm good at listening, Mr. Sterling. You should try it sometime." He smirked, leaning closer. "Careful. That mouth of yours might get you in trouble." "Maybe I like trouble," she shot back, her pulse racing. The air crackled, his cologne hitting her senses, cedar and a hint of spice. For a moment she forgot the room, the stakes, everything but the challenge in his gaze. Then she stepped back, clutching the tablet like a shield. "I'll send the notes." "Do that," he said, his smirk fading into something softer, almost curious. As he walked away, Amara exhaled, her cheeks warm. Nathan Sterling was dangerous, not just his power, but the way he made her feel seen. She couldn't afford distractions, not when Miles was so close. That evening, Sterling Heights hosted a children's charity event in the ballroom, a swirl of laughter and clinking glasses. Amara volunteered for extra hours, her eyes scanning for Miles. She spotted him by a table of cupcakes, his toy truck clutched tight, his curls falling into his eyes. Olivia stood nearby, her phone glued to her ear, ignoring him. Amara's heart twisted. She grabbed a plate of cookies and approached, kneeling to his level. "Hey, little man," she said, her voice soft. "You like cars? My girl loves them too." Miles looked up, his hazel eyes wary but curious. "Yeah, this one's a racer." He held up the truck, and Amara's throat tightened. His voice was small, but it was his, her son's. "Cool pick," she said, handing him a cookie. "What's your name?" "Miles," he mumbled, taking the cookie. His sleeve slipped, revealing the star-shaped birthmark. Amara's breath caught, her fingers itching to touch him, to pull him close. But Olivia's voice cut through. "Miles, stop bothering the staff." She strode over, her heels clicking, her green eyes narrowing at Amara. "Don't you have work to do?" Amara stood, her jaw tight. "Just being friendly? He's a good kid." Olivia's lips curled. "Mind your place, sweetheart." She grabbed Miles's hand, pulling him away. He glanced back at Amara, and for a moment, she saw a spark of trust in his eyes. It broke her. Back in the staff room, Amara sank onto a bench, her hands shaking. She wanted to scream, to storm after Olivia and claim her son, but she couldn't, not without proof, not without a plan. She pulled out her phone, her fingers hovering over Jamal's number. He'd offered to dig into legal records, but calling meant exposing her past, her pain. She hesitated, then dialed. "Yo, Mara." Jamal's warm voice answered. "What's good?" "I saw him," she whispered, her voice cracking. "Miles. He's here, Jamal, with the Harpers." There was a pause then. Damn. Okay, we got this. Meet me tomorrow at the diner. Bring everything you know. She hung up, her resolve hardening. Jamal was her rock, a lawyer with a heart as big as his brain. He'd grown up with her in Englewood, knew her scars. If anyone could help, it was him. The next day, Amara met Jamal at a greasy spoon in Englewood, the smell of bacon and coffee filling the air. He slid into the booth, his locks tied back, his brown eyes serious. Spill it, Mara. What's the deal with Miles? She told him everything, the birthmark, Olivia, the Sterling Harper connection. Jamal leaned back, whistling. This is heavy. Harpers are bad news, and Sterling? Nathan's not some choir boy. You sure you can play this game? I don't have a choice, she said, her voice fierce. Miles is my son. I'm getting him back. Jamal nodded, pulling out his laptop. I'll check adoption records, see if the Harpers filed anything. You keep digging at Sterling. But be careful, Mara. These folks don't play fair. That night, Amara sat in her apartment, the glow of her laptop casting shadows on the walls. She hacked into Coleman Innovations' old servers, her fingers trembling as she sifted through emails. Most were mundane, but one caught her eye, a thread between Lena and an unknown contact. The Sterling deal is set, it read. Skyline's our ticket. Marcus is out of the way. Her blood ran cold. Marcus, her father, had died of a supposed heart attack. But this smelled like murder. She saved the email, her resolve hardening. Lena and Vivian weren't just thieves, they were monsters. But as she closed her laptop, a notification pinged, an anonymous message, short and chilling. Leave Chicago, Amara, or you'll lose more than last time. Her heart stopped. They knew she was here. Lena, Vivian, maybe the Harpers. She locked her door, her breath shallow, but sleep wouldn't come. The next morning, Amara was back at Sterling Heights, her eyes scanning every face. She'd been assigned to the Skyline project as a temporary assistant, thanks to her performance in the meeting. The promotion was a lifeline, access to Nathan, to records, to power. She sat in a glass-walled office, typing up reports, when Nathan appeared, his blazer slung over one shoulder. You're settling in, he said, leaning against the doorframe. Not bad for someone who spills coffee. She smirked, despite herself. Not bad for a guy who walks around half-dressed. He chuckled, stepping closer. You're not scared of me, are you? Should I be? She tilted her head, her voice teasing, but her eyes wary. His presence was magnetic, pulling her in even as her instincts screamed to run. Maybe. He sat on the desk's edge, his knee brushing hers. The contact sent a jolt through her, and she shifted, her cheeks warm. Why are you here, Amara? Really? She froze, her mind racing. He saw too much, asked too much. Same as you, she said, deflecting. Trying to make something happen. He studied her, his gaze intense. You're hiding something. I'll figure it out. Good luck, she said, standing to leave. But as she passed, his hand grazed her arm, light but deliberate. Her breath hitched, and for a moment, she imagined giving in, letting his touch erase her fears. Then she pulled away, her voice firm. I've got work to do. That evening, Amara worked late, the office quiet except for the hum of the city outside. She slipped into the records room, her heart pounding as she searched for anything on Miles. The files were a maze, guest logs, contracts, nothing useful. But then, tucked in a folder labeled private, she found it. A document detailing Sterling Enterprises' funding for an adoption. Miles's name was there, linked to the Harpers, but no mention of Nathan. Her knees buckled and she sank to the floor, the paper trembling in her hands. Nathan hadn't known, but someone in his family did. Arthur Sterling, his grandfather maybe, the man who'd built this empire. Amara's tears fell, hot and silent, as she clutched the document. She saw Miles's face, his quiet trust, and her heart broke all over again. If Nathan was innocent, she'd misjudged him. But if he wasn't, he was part of the machine that stole her son. She stumbled back to her desk, the office dark, her mind a storm. She thought of Isabel, her bright-eyed girl waiting in Atlanta. She thought of Miles, so close yet untouchable. And she thought of Nathan, his smirk, his touch, his secrets. She didn't know who to trust, but she knew one thing. She was done hiding. Amara stood, her reflection faint in the office window. Chicago's lights stretched before her, a city of dreams and nightmares. She whispered to herself, her voice steel, "I'm done playing nice." Tomorrow she'd face Nathan, demand answers, and take one step closer to Miles, even if it meant burning everything down. The Chicago dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, but inside Sterling Heights, the air was thick with tension. Amara Coleman stood outside Nathan Sterling's office, her heart pounding like a drum. The document she'd found last night, a record of Sterling Enterprises funding Miles's adoption by the Harpers, burned in her mind. Her son, her Miles, was tangled in a web of power and lies, and Nathan, the man whose touch made her pulse race, might be part of it. She smoothed her navy blazer, a step up from her housekeeping uniform, and knocked. Today, she wasn't just an assistant. She was a mother on a mission. "Come in," Nathan's voice called, low and steady. Amara pushed the door open, her hazel eyes locking onto him. Nathan sat behind his desk, his dark hair slightly mussed, his blue eyes sharp as he reviewed a tablet. The morning light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting shadows across his tailored suit. He looked up, his expression shifting from focus to curiosity. "Amara, you're early." "We need to talk," she said, her voice firm. She closed the door, the click echoing in the quiet room. Her hands trembled, but she clenched them, stepping forward. "No games, Nathan. I found something, and I need answers." His brow furrowed, and he leaned back, gesturing to a chair. "Sit. What's this about?" She didn't sit. Instead, she pulled the folded document from her pocket and tossed it onto his desk. This. Sterling Enterprises paid for an adoption. A boy named Miles, handed to the Harpers. My son. Her voice cracked, but she held his gaze, daring him to lie. "Did you know?" Nathan's eyes widened, and he grabbed the paper, scanning it quickly. His jaw tightened, a storm brewing in his expression. "Amara, I swear, I had no idea about this." He stood, his voice urgent. "This isn't my signature. I don't handle adoptions. Where did you get this?" "Records room," she said, her tone sharp. "Don't play dumb, Nathan. Your family's name is all over it. If you didn't know, who did?" He ran a hand through his hair, pacing to the window. The Chicago River sparkled below, but his focus was inward. "My grandfather, Arthur, maybe. He's got his hands in everything, even stuff I don't see. But taking a kid? That's not how we operate." Amara's chest tightened, anger and fear colliding. "You expect me to believe you're clueless? My son's been with Olivia Harper for years, right under your nose. He's scared, Nathan. She treats him like a prop, and I can't—" Her voice broke, tears spilling over. She swiped them away, furious at her weakness. "I can't lose him again." Nathan turned, his face softening. He stepped closer, his hand hovering near her arm before dropping. "Amara, look at me. I'd never hurt you or your son. If this is true, I'll find out who's behind it. But you have to trust me." "Trust you?" She laughed, bitter. "I trusted my family once. They drugged me, framed me, and took Miles. I don't have trust to spare." He flinched, but his voice stayed steady. Then let me earn it. We'll dig into this together. Harper, my grandfather, all of it. But you can't go rogue. If the Harpers are involved, they're dangerous. She studied him, searching for a lie in his eyes. There was none, only a raw sincerity that unnerved her. She wanted to believe him, but the scars of betrayal ran deep. Fine, she said at last. But if you're playing me, Nathan, I'll burn this place down. He nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Noted. Now let's figure this out. They spent the morning poring over Skyline's contracts, cross-referencing names tied to Harper Industries. Amara's tech background kicked in, her fingers flying over a laptop as she traced payments to a shell company linked to Gerald Harper. Nathan watched, his expression a mix of respect and surprise. "You're good at this," he said. "Where'd you learn to dig like that?" "Survival," she replied, not looking up. "When you lose everything, you learn fast." He leaned closer, his shoulder brushing hers. The contact sent a spark through her, and she stiffened, focusing on the screen. But Nathan's voice was soft. "You didn't lose everything, Amara. You're still here, fighting." Her throat tightened, and for a moment, she let his words sink in. But she pushed them away, pointing to a transaction. "Look, Harper's funneling money through Skyline for substandard materials. And this..." She opened an email from Lena to an unknown contact. "It mentions my dad. Marcus is handled. He didn't die of a heart attack, Nathan. They killed him." Nathan's face darkened, and he slammed a fist on the desk. "If this is true, Harper's done. And your sister and stepmother, they're going down with him." Amara nodded, her resolve hardening, but doubt lingered. Nathan was too close to this world, too tied to Arthur. She couldn't let her guard down, no matter how his presence made her heart race. That afternoon, Amara met Jamal at a park in Englewood, the air thick with the scent of grilled hot dogs from a nearby vendor. Kids laughed on swings, their voices a stark contrast to the weight in her chest. Jamal slid onto a bench, his locks tucked under a cap. "You look like hell, Mara. What's new?" She handed him a USB drive with the Skyline data. "Harper's dirty and Lena's in deep, but Nathan, he says he didn't know about Miles. I don't know what to believe." Jamal's eyes narrowed. "Sterling's a player, Mara. Don't let those blue eyes fool you. I'm checking adoption records, but you need to watch your back. If Harper's got Miles, they won't let him go easy." She nodded, her gaze drifting to a boy on the slide, his curls like Miles's. "I saw him, Jamal. He's so quiet, so small. I just want to hold him." Jamal's hand covered hers, warm and steady. "You will. You're the strongest person I know. But don't do this alone, okay?" His touch was familiar, comforting, but it stirred a pang of guilt. Jamal had always been there, his feelings for her an open secret. She pulled her hand back, smiling faintly. "Thanks, Jay. I got this." That evening, Amara worked late at Sterling Heights, the office empty except for the city's hum outside. Nathan appeared, his tie loosened, a takeout bag in hand. "You eat yet?" he asked, setting down containers of deep-dish pizza. She raised an eyebrow, amused despite herself. "You brought pizza? What's the catch?" "No catch," he said, grinning. "Can't have my best assistant starving." They sat on the floor, the pizza box between them, the city lights sparkling through the window. The moment felt almost normal, a break from the chaos. Amara took a bite, savoring the cheesy warmth. "Not bad, Sterling. You do this for all your staff?" "Only the ones who spill coffee on me," he teased, his eyes warm. He leaned back, his voice softening. "Tell me something real, Amara. What's home to you?" She hesitated, the question cutting deeper than she expected. "Englewood," she said at last. "My dad's old house, with jazz records and Sunday dinners, before it all went to hell." She looked away, her throat tight. "What about you?" Nathan's smile faded. "Never had a home, not really. Just this." He gestured to the office, the city. "Power, control. It's all I know." Her heart ached at his honesty, and she reached out, her hand brushing his. "That's not all you are, Nathan." His fingers closed around hers, his touch sending a jolt through her. The air shifted, charged with something unspoken. He leaned closer, his breath warm against her cheek. "You make me want to be more," he murmured. Her pulse raced, and for a moment she let herself imagine it, his lips on hers, the world fading away. But fear clawed at her, and she pulled back, standing quickly. "I can't," she said, her voice shaky. "Not now." Nathan nodded, his expression a mix of regret and understanding. "I'll wait, Amara, as long as it takes." She grabbed her bag and left, the elevator ride a blur. Outside, a summer rain had started, soaking her as she stood under a flickering streetlight. Nathan's words echoed, but so did her doubts. He was offering her something real, but what if it was a trap? What if he was just another lie? The next day, Amara threw herself into Skyline, her desk piled with reports. She and Nathan worked side by side, their interactions professional but laced with tension. They uncovered more. A trail of emails linking Gerald Harper to a smuggling ring, using Skyline to move proprietary tech overseas. Amara's stomach churned. This wasn't just about money. It was about power, and her father had paid the price. During a break, Nathan found her by the coffee machine, his voice low. "You're pushing too hard, Amara. Let me handle Harper." She shook her head, her eyes fierce. "This is my fight. My dad, my son. You don't get to call the shots." He stepped closer, his voice urgent. "I'm not your enemy. Why can't you see that? Because I've been burned before," she snapped, her voice trembling. "And every time I let someone in, I lose." He reached for her, but she stepped back, her heart racing. "Don't," she said, turning away. She felt his gaze on her as she walked off, the weight of her words hanging heavy. That night, Amara sat in her apartment, the rain drumming against the windows. She opened her laptop, her fingers hovering over a video call to Atlanta. Isabel's face appeared, her braids swinging as she waved. "Mommy, when you coming home?" "Soon, baby," Amara said, her voice soft. "You being good?" "Yup, but I miss you. And Miles, you find him yet?" Amara's chest tightened, tears stinging her eyes. "I'm trying, sweetheart. He's close. I promise." Isabel's smile faded. "Hurry, Mommy. I want us to be a family." The call ended, and Amara buried her face in her hands, the weight of Isabel's words crushing her. She thought of Miles, his quiet trust, and Nathan, his offer to fight beside her. She was so close, but every step felt like a gamble. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Jamal. "Found something. Meet me tomorrow. It's big." Amara's heart raced. She stood, pacing her small apartment, the walls covered with Isabel's drawings. The city outside pulsed, its lights a reminder of the battle ahead. She grabbed her jacket, her resolve steel. "I'm coming, Miles," she whispered, "and I'm bringing the truth with me." The Chicago night was alive with the hum of neon signs and the distant wail of sirens. But in Englewood, the streets felt heavier, cloaked in shadows. Amara Coleman sprinted down a narrow alley, her breath ragged, her sneakers slapping against wet pavement. The air smelled of rain and rust, and her heart pounded as she glanced over her shoulder. Two figures, big guys in dark hoodies, were closing in, their footsteps echoing. She'd been careless, hacking too deep into Harper Industries' servers, and now someone wanted her silenced. Her fingers tightened around the USB drive in her pocket, the evidence of Gerald Harper's smuggling ring burning like a coal. She couldn't stop, not when Miles was so close. Amara ducked behind a dumpster, her chest heaving as she pressed herself against the cold brick wall. The alley was a maze, but she knew Englewood's corners like the back of her hand. She'd grown up here, dodging trouble with Jamal, dreaming of a life beyond the struggle. Now, trouble had found her again. The men's voices carried low and urgent. "She's got to be close. Boss said no loose ends." Her stomach churned. Boss? Lena? Vivian? Harper? She didn't know, but the threat was real. She waited, her breath shallow until their footsteps faded. Then she bolted, weaving through side streets until she reached a familiar jazz club, its neon sign flickering blue note. The door was heavy, but she slipped inside, the warm hum of a saxophone wrapping around her like a blanket. The crowd was thin, a mix of locals sipping whiskey and nodding to the music. Amara sank into a corner booth, her hands trembling as she texted Jamal. "Need you. Blue note. Now." She pulled her hoodie tighter, her hazel eyes scanning the room. The club was her sanctuary, where she'd once read poetry as a teen, her words weaving dreams of a better life. Now, it was a lifeline. She thought of Miles, his star-shaped birthmark, his quiet trust. She thought of Isabel, waiting in Atlanta, her voice echoing, "I want us to be a family." And Nathan, his touch, his promise to fight beside her. She'd pushed him away, but the ache in her chest said she wanted him closer. Jamal arrived 20 minutes later, his locks damp from the rain, his brown eyes sharp with worry. He slid into the booth, his voice low. "Mara, what the hell's going on? You look like you ran from a ghost." "Worse," she said, her voice shaky. She slid the USB across the table. "I got too close. Harper's smuggling tech through Skyline, and Lena's in on it. Someone sent goons after me tonight." Jamal's jaw tightened and he pocketed the drive. "You're playing with fire, Mara. I told you to be careful." "I don't have a choice," she snapped, her eyes blazing. "Miles is with Olivia Harper. She's breaking him, Jamal." "I saw it. Yesterday at the hotel." She yelled at him for spilling juice, called him a burden. "He's 5, and he's scared." Her voice cracked, tears spilling over. "I can't wait anymore." Jamal reached for her hand, his touch steady. "I hear you. I'm running the adoption records, and this..." He tapped the USB. "This could nail Harper, but you gotta stay alive, Mara. You're no good to Miles if you're gone." She nodded, wiping her eyes. "What did you find?" He leaned in, his voice a whisper. "The adoption's shady. No birth mother listed, just a payment from Sterling Enterprises to a private agency. Arthur Sterling's name is on it, not Nathan's. But here's the kicker. Harper's got a lawyer on retainer, same one Lena used to rewrite your dad's will." Amara's blood ran cold. Lena and Vivian weren't just stealing her inheritance. They were tied to the Harpers, maybe even to Miles's disappearance. "They're all in this," she said, her voice steel. "And I'm taking them down." Jamal's eyes softened. "I'm with you, Mara. Always." His hand lingered on hers, and she felt the weight of his unspoken feelings. She pulled back gently, her smile tight. Jamal was her rock, but her heart was tangled elsewhere, with Nathan, despite everything. Back at Sterling Heights the next day, Amara buried herself in Skyline's paperwork, her desk a fortress of reports. Nathan had been distant since their fight, his texts short, his presence scarce. She missed his teasing, his warmth, but trust was a minefield. She was typing when Olivia Harper strode into the office, her blonde hair sleek, her designer heels clicking. Miles trailed behind, his toy truck clutched tight, his eyes downcast. "Ms. Coleman," Olivia said, her voice dripping with disdain. "I need these files sent to my father's office. Now." Amara's gaze flicked to Miles, her heart twisting. He looked smaller today, his shoulders hunched. She forced a nod, her voice calm. "Sure thing. I'll get it done." Olivia's eyes narrowed. "Good. And keep your charity chats with Miles to yourself. He doesn't need distractions." Amara's fists clenched under the desk, but she held her tongue. "He's a kid," she said, her tone sharp. "Maybe he needs someone to actually see him." Olivia's lips curled. "You're out of line. Stick to your job." She turned to Miles, her voice harsh. "Stop sulking. You're embarrassing me." Miles flinched, and Amara's blood boiled. She stood, her voice low but fierce. "He's not embarrassing anyone. Lay off him." Olivia froze, her green eyes flashing. "Know your place or you'll regret it." She grabbed Miles's arm, pulling him toward the door. He glanced back at Amara, his eyes wide, and she forced a smile, her heart shattering. As they left, Amara sank into her chair, her hands shaking. She wanted to chase them, to scoop Miles up and run. But she was one woman against an empire. She needed proof, leverage, something to break the Harpers' hold. That evening, Amara was working late, the office dark except for her desk lamp. Nathan appeared, his tie gone, his sleeves rolled up. "You're still here," he said, his voice soft. "Thought you'd be home by now." "Got work to do," she said, not looking up. Her fingers typed furiously, chasing a lead on Harper's smuggling. He sat on the desk's edge, his knee brushing hers. "You're avoiding me?" She stopped, her eyes meeting his. "Maybe I am. You didn't tell me about Arthur's deal with Harper. You knew they were tight, and you kept it quiet." Nathan's jaw tightened. "I was protecting you. Harper's dangerous, and I didn't want you caught in the crossfire." "Protecting me?" She stood, her voice rising. "You lied, Nathan. How's that different from Lena, from Vivian? I gave you a piece of my heart, and you played me." He stood too, his eyes stormy. "I'm not them, Amara. I'm trying to keep you safe, but you keep shutting me out." "Because I've been burned before," she shouted, tears spilling over. "Every time I let someone in, I lose. My dad, my son, my life. I can't do it again." Nathan stepped closer, his voice raw. "You're not losing me. I'm right here, fighting for you, for us." Her breath hitched, his words cutting through her defenses. His hand reached for hers, his touch warm, grounding. For a moment, she wanted to lean into him, to let his strength carry her. But fear won. She pulled away, her voice trembling. "I can't, Nathan. Not now." He nodded, his expression pained. "I'll give you space, but I'm not going anywhere." He grabbed his jacket and left, the door clicking shut. Amara sank into her chair, her tears falling freely. She felt like she was drowning, torn between her heart and her head. Nathan's honesty had shaken her, but so had his secrets. She thought of Miles, his flinch under Olivia's words, and Isabel, her voice begging for a family. She was so close, but every step felt like a betrayal. The next day, Amara met Jamal at a diner, the clatter of plates and smell of coffee grounding her. He slid a folder across the table. "Got something?" Harper's lawyer filed a custody transfer for Miles, but it's fishy. No birth records, just a payout from Sterling, and Lena's name's on a related wire transfer. Amara's heart raced. "They bought him. My son." She gripped the folder, her knuckles white. "What about my dad?" Jamal's face darkened. "Still digging, but there's a tox report from his autopsy. Traces of a slow poison. Lena and Vivian were at his last dinner." Her blood ran cold. "Murder," She'd suspected it, but the truth hit like a freight train. "I'm ending this," she said, her voice steel. "At Arthur's gala. I'll expose them all." Jamal grabbed her arm. "Mara, that's suicide. Harper's got muscle and Lena's desperate. You need a plan." "I've got one," she said, her eyes fierce. "And I'm not backing down." That afternoon, Amara volunteered for a charity event at Sterling Heights, hoping to see Miles. The park outside was alive with kids chasing balloons, their laughter a stark contrast to her turmoil. She spotted Miles by a fountain, his toy truck forgotten as he stared at the water. Olivia was on her phone, oblivious. Amara approached, her heart pounding. "Hey, little man," she said, kneeling. "You okay?" Miles looked up, his hazel eyes soft. "It's loud here," he mumbled. "Yeah, it is," she said, smiling. "Want to sit with me? We can watch the water." He nodded, scooting closer. Amara's throat tightened, her fingers itching to hug him. She pointed to the fountain. "See that? My girl says it's magic. Make a wish." Miles closed his eyes, his lips moving silently. Amara's heart broke, imagining his wish. A home, a family. She was about to speak when a voice cut through. "Mommy!" Isabel's voice rang out, and Amara turned, her breath catching. Her daughter, braids bouncing, ran toward her, followed by her friend from Atlanta. Amara had arranged for Isabel to visit. A risky move, but one she couldn't resist. "Isabel," Amara whispered, pulling her into a hug. She looked at Miles, who watched, curious. "Baby, this is a friend. Miles." Isabel grinned, grabbing his hand. "You're my brother. Mommy's gonna bring you home." Miles' eyes widened, and Amara's heart stopped. Olivia looked up, her phone forgotten, and strode over. "What's this?" she snapped, yanking Miles away. "Stay away from him!" Amara stood, her voice low. "He's just playing. Let him be a kid." Olivia's eyes flashed. "You're pushing it. Keep your distance, or you'll regret it." She pulled Miles toward the car, his gaze lingering on Amara and Isabel. Amara held Isabel tight, both of them trembling as tears fell. "We'll get him, baby," she whispered, her voice fierce. "I promise." That night Amara sat in her apartment, Isabel asleep in her lap. The city's lights flickered outside, a reminder of the battle ahead. The gala was days away, her chance to expose Lena, Vivian, and Harper. But Nathan's absence gnawed at her, his words echoing, "I'm fighting for you." She didn't know if she could trust him, but she knew one thing. She'd fight for Miles, for Isabel, for the family they deserved, even if it cost her everything. The grand ballroom of Sterling Heights shimmered under a canopy of crystal chandeliers, their light dancing across gold-trimmed walls and polished marble floors. Chicago's elite filled the space, their laughter and clinking champagne glasses a stark contrast to the storm brewing in Amara Coleman's chest. She stood at the edge of the crowd, her deep red dress hugging her curves, her coiled hair swept into an elegant updo. The gown, borrowed from a friend, was a far cry from her housekeeping uniform, but it felt like armor tonight. This was Arthur Sterling's 80th birthday gala, a night of power plays and whispered deals, and Amara was here to detonate a bomb. Tucked in her clutch was a USB drive loaded with evidence, emails, financial records, and a toxicology report that would expose Lena, Vivian, and Gerald Harper for their crimes. Amara's hazel eyes scanned the room, her heart pounding. Miles was somewhere in this crowd, likely with Olivia Harper, his small frame lost among the glittering gowns and tuxedos. She hadn't seen him since the park, where Isabel's joyful cry, "You're my brother," had nearly unraveled her. Nathan Sterling was here too, his presence a magnet she couldn't ignore. Their fight had left a raw wound, his secrecy about Arthur's ties to Harper cutting deep, yet his words lingered. "I'm fighting for you." She wanted to believe him, but trust was a tightrope, and she was one misstep from falling. The ballroom buzzed as Arthur Sterling took the stage, his silver hair gleaming, his voice commanding. At 80, he was a titan, his sharp eyes missing nothing. "Tonight," he boomed, "we celebrate family, legacy, and the future of Sterling Enterprises." The crowd applauded, but Amara's gaze flicked to Nathan, standing beside his grandfather. His tailored suit hugged his frame, his blue eyes distant, his jaw tight. He hadn't looked at her since she arrived, and the distance stung. Amara slipped through the crowd, her heels clicking softly, her clutch gripped tight. She'd enlisted a tech assistant, a quiet kid named Marcus who owed her a favor, to handle the ballroom's AV system. The plan was simple. During Arthur's toast, Marcus would project her evidence onto the massive screen behind the stage. Lena, Vivian, and Harper would be exposed, their empires crumbling before Chicago's most powerful. But the risk was colossal. If she failed, she'd lose her job, her safety, maybe even Miles. She spotted Lena across the room, her blonde hair sleek, her emerald dress screaming wealth. Vivian stood beside her, her face tight, her eyes darting nervously. They thought they'd won, that Amara was still the broken girl they'd exiled 5 years ago. They were wrong. She caught Jamal's eye near the bar, his locks tucked under a cap, his nod subtle but reassuring. He'd brought a contact from the DA's office, ready to act once the evidence dropped. Everything was in place. Then she saw Miles, sitting at a table with a nanny, his toy truck clutched tight. His star-shaped birthmark peeked from his collar, and Amara's breath caught. He looked small, lost, his hazel eyes scanning the crowd. She wanted to run to him, to hold him until the world made sense again. But Olivia Harper glided over, her smile forced as she adjusted Miles's tie. "Sit up straight," she snapped, her voice low. Miles flinched and Amara's fists clenched. She forced herself to turn away, her resolve hardening. Tonight, she'd free him. The lights dimmed, and Arthur raised his glass, the crowd falling silent. "To Sterling Enterprises," he said, "and to my grandson, Nathan, who'll lead us into the future." Nathan forced a smile, his eyes finding Amara's for a fleeting moment. She nodded, her signal to Marcus. It was time. The screen behind Arthur flickered, and gasps rippled through the room. Instead of the Sterling logo, an email appeared. Lena to Gerald Harper, dated weeks before Marcus Coleman's death. "The poison's untraceable," it read. "Coleman's out. Skyline's ours." Another slide followed, financial records showing Harper's smuggling ring, funneling tech through Skyline's supply chain. The final blow. A toxicology report confirming Marcus Coleman's murder by slow poison. The crowd erupted in murmurs, faces turning to Lena, Vivian, and Gerald, who stood frozen near the stage. Amara stepped forward, her voice steady, as she grabbed a microphone from a stunned waiter. "I'm Amara Coleman," she said, her words echoing. 5 years ago, my sister Lena and stepmother Vivian framed me, stole my father's company, and took my son. They murdered Marcus Coleman to control Coleman Innovations. Gerald Harper helped, using Skyline to smuggle tech and line his pockets. This ends tonight. The room was a sea of shocked faces, phones recording, whispers spreading like wildfire. Lena's face drained of color, her voice shrill. "Lies! She's a nobody, a disgraced liar!" Vivian clutched Lena's arm, her eyes wild. "This is absurd! She's delusional!" Gerald Harper, his silver hair glinting, stepped forward, his voice booming. "This is a stunt. A disgruntled employee's fantasy. I demand—" "Enough!" Nathan's voice cut through, his presence commanding as he joined Amara on the stage. His eyes locked onto hers, a mix of shock and resolve. "I've seen the evidence. It's real. Harper, you're done." The crowd gasped, and Amara's heart raced. Nathan was choosing her, publicly in front of his grandfather, his world. But before she could speak, Olivia Harper lunged forward, her green eyes blazing. She snatched the microphone, her voice venomous. "You want the truth? Amara's been lying to you all. She's Miles's mother. And Nathan." She turned to him, her smile cruel. "He's the father. That night 5 years ago, it was you." The room fell silent, the air thick with shock. Amara's knees buckled, her clutch slipping to the floor. Nathan turned to her, his face pale, his voice barely a whisper. "Is this true?" Her tears fell, her voice trembling. "Yes. Miles is our son. So is Isabel. I didn't tell you because I was scared you'd take him away." She looked at Miles, who watched from his table, his eyes wide with confusion. "I'm sorry, Nathan. I couldn't risk it." Nathan staggered, the weight of her words crashing over him. The crowd buzzed, cameras flashing, but Amara's world narrowed to Nathan's eyes. Hurt, betrayal, but also a flicker of something deeper. Arthur Sterling stepped forward, his face a mask of fury. "You infiltrated my family," he growled. "You dared—" "I came for my son," Amara said, her voice fierce. "I stayed for justice. You funded his adoption, Arthur. You gave him to the Harpers. Why?" Arthur's eyes narrowed, but before he could answer, police officers entered, led by Jamal's DA contact. Gerald Harper shouted about his lawyers as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. Olivia spat insults, her composure gone. Lena screamed, "You'll pay for this, Amara!" as security escorted her out. Vivian collapsed, sobbing, her empire crumbling. The evidence was airtight, and Chicago's elite watched it all unfold like a live drama. Amara's victory was bittersweet. She looked at Miles, his small hands clutching his truck, his face a mix of fear and hope. She wanted to run to him, but Nathan blocked her path, his eyes stormy. "We need to talk," he said, his voice raw. "Now." They slipped into a private room off the ballroom, the chaos muted behind the heavy door. Amara faced him, her heart pounding. "Why didn't you trust me?" Nathan demanded, his voice breaking. "Miles is my son, and you kept it from me." "I couldn't risk losing him again," she said, tears streaming. "You don't know what it's like, Nathan. They took him from me, left a note saying he was with your family. I was alone, scared. I didn't know it was you that night until I saw Miles' birthmark." Nathan ran a hand through his hair, his face torn. "That night, I was drugged too, Amara. I woke up alone. No memory. If I'd known—" He stopped, his voice thick. "He's my son too. You should have told me." Her heart shattered. "I wanted to. But every time I got close, I saw your world, your power, your family. I thought you'd take him and leave me with nothing." Nathan stepped closer, his hand brushing hers. "I'd never do that. You're not nothing, Amara. You're everything." His touch sent a jolt through her, and for a moment she saw not the CEO, but a man, raw and open, fighting for her. The air crackled, their breaths mingling. She wanted to lean into him, to let his warmth heal her wounds, but Arthur's voice broke the moment, his presence filling the doorway. "You're his mother," he said, his tone heavy. "I had Miles tested after Olivia's claim. I was wrong about you, Amara. But Nathan—" He turned to his grandson. "You can't let this stand." Nathan's jaw tightened. "Miles stays with us. Both of us." He looked at Amara, his voice firm. "We figure this out together, or the courts do. Your call." Amara's desperation surged. "You can't keep him from me, Nathan. He's my son." "I'm not," he said, his voice gentle but unyielding. "He's my family too. We do this right." She shook her head, tears falling. "I won't lose him again." "Then don't push me away," he said, his hand squeezing hers. The room felt too small, their pain and hope colliding. Arthur sighed, his stern face softening. "Stay, Amara. Be with Miles. I pushed Nathan toward Olivia for business, not love. I see now what family means." Amara nodded, her tears unstoppable. She looked at Nathan, her voice trembling. "What about us?" He didn't answer, his silence a wall. The gala's noise filtered through, the city buzzing with the scandal. Amara's fight wasn't over. She had Miles, but Nathan held her heart, and the future was a question mark. She stepped back into the ballroom, her eyes finding Miles. He ran to her, his small arms wrapping around her legs. "You're okay," she whispered, kneeling to hug him. His warmth was everything. A piece of her soul returned. Isabel appeared, her braids swinging, and joined the embrace, their laughter a balm. Nathan watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. Amara stood, holding her children, her resolve steel. Lena, Vivian, and Harper were gone, their lies exposed. But the truth had bound her to Nathan, to Miles, to a path she hadn't expected. Chicago's lights stretched before her, a city of battles and dreams. She'd won this round, but the war for her family, her heart, was far from over. The Chicago skyline glowed under a late summer sunset, its towers reflecting hues of orange and purple across the river. In Englewood, Amara Coleman's small apartment was alive with the smell of fried chicken and cornbread, the sizzle of the skillet mingling with the soulful notes of Aretha Franklin drifting from a Bluetooth speaker. Amara stood at the stove, her coiled hair loose around her shoulders, her hazel eyes soft as she stirred a pot of collard greens. It was a rare night of peace, a moment stolen from the chaos of the past weeks. The gala had changed everything. Lena and Vivian were in custody. Gerald Harper's empire was crumbling, and Miles was finally in her arms. But Nathan Sterling, the man who turned her world upside down, remained a question mark, his silence since the gala a weight on her heart. Miles and Isabel sat at the kitchen table, their laughter filling the room as they colored a picture of a race car. Miles's star-shaped birthmark peeked from his collar, a reminder of the years stolen from them. Isabel, her braids swinging, nudged him. "You gotta make it red, Miles. Red's the fastest." Miles grinned, his shyness fading. "Nuh-uh, blue's better." His voice was stronger now, his eyes brighter. Amara watched them, her chest swelling with a love so fierce it hurt. She'd fought for this, her children together, safe. But the ache for a complete family lingered, and Nathan's face flashed in her mind, his blue eyes raw with pain and hope. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. She wiped her hands on a dish towel, her pulse quickening. Jamal had promised to stop by with legal updates, but when she opened the door, Nathan stood there, his tailored blazer traded for a simple black sweater, his arms full of grocery bags. Miles and Isabel peeked from the table, their eyes wide. "Hope I'm not crashing," Nathan said, his voice warm but hesitant. "Thought you might need dessert." He held up a bag, the logo of a local bakery peeking out. Amara's breath caught, her heart torn between joy and caution. "You're a long way from downtown, Sterling. What's the deal?" He stepped inside, his smile soft. "Just a guy trying to make things right. Can I come in?" She nodded, stepping aside. Miles ran over, his toy truck in hand. "Mr. Nathan, you got cake?" Nathan knelt, ruffling his hair. "You bet, buddy. Chocolate, your favorite." Miles beamed and Amara's throat tightened. Nathan's ease with her son was disarming, a glimpse of the man beneath the CEO. Isabel tugged Amara's sleeve, whispering, "He's cool, Mommy. He makes you smile." Amara's cheeks warmed, and she shooed Isabel back to the table. "Go color, Missy." She turned to Nathan, her voice low. "You didn't have to come. We're figuring things out." "I know," he said, setting the bags on the counter. "But I want to be here. For Miles. For Isabel." His eyes met hers, steady and unguarded. "For you." Her heart raced, but she busied herself with the greens, avoiding his gaze. "You say that now, but what happens when your world pulls you back? I'm not some downtown fairy tale, Nathan." He stepped closer, his voice low. "I don't want a fairy tale. I want this. Greasy spoons, jazz clubs, you yelling at me when I mess up. I'm all in, Amara." She turned, her eyes searching his. The air between them crackled, his cedar cologne mixing with the kitchen's warmth. She wanted to believe him. But fear lingered, a shadow of her past betrayals. Before she could speak, Miles called, "Dinner's ready, right, Mommy?" "Yeah, baby," she said, breaking the moment. "Let's eat." They sat around the table, a makeshift family, the kids giggling as Nathan told a story about burning toast that morning. Amara watched, her guard softening. Nathan wasn't just playing a part. He was here, in her world, choosing them. After dinner, she sent Miles and Isabel to wash up, leaving her alone with Nathan in the dim kitchen. He helped clear plates, his shoulder brushing hers. "You're quiet," he said, his voice gentle. "What's on your mind?" She leaned against the counter, her arms crossed. "You, us. I keep waiting for the catch, Nathan. You're a sterling. I'm just—" "Don't," he interrupted, stepping close. His hand cupped her cheek, his touch warm. "You're not just anything. You're Amara Coleman, the woman who took down an empire to save her son. The woman I can't stop thinking about." Her breath hitched, his thumb tracing her jaw. The room shrank, the world narrowing to his eyes, his warmth. "You hurt me," she whispered. "Keeping Arthur's secrets, not telling me." "I know," he said, his voice raw. "I messed up. I thought I was protecting you, but I was wrong. I'm sorry, Amara. Let me make it right." She closed her eyes, his words sinking in. When she opened them, she saw not the CEO, but Nathan, the man who'd stood by her at the gala, who'd chosen her over his legacy. She leaned into his touch, her voice trembling. "Prove it, Sterling." He smiled, slow and sure, and pulled her into a kiss, soft at first, then deepening with a hunger that set her skin alight. Her hands found his chest, his heartbeat steady under her palms. The kiss was a promise, a healing, their pain and hope intertwining. When they parted, her forehead rested against his, their breaths mingling. "This is us," she whispered. "No more secrets." "No more secrets," he echoed, his arms wrapping around her. The kids' laughter drifted from the next room, and Amara felt whole, a piece of her soul clicking into place. Days later, Nathan texted her, "Meet me at Blue Note tonight. Bring the kids." Amara's stomach flipped, unsure if this was a date or a confrontation. She dressed Miles and Isabel in their best, Miles in a tiny blazer, Isabel in a dress with bright beads, and headed to the jazz club, its neon sign a beacon in the Chicago night. The club was packed, the air thick with saxophone notes and the clink of glasses. Nathan stood by the stage, his sweater swapped for a tailored jacket, his blue eyes warm as he waved them over. "Wow," Isabel whispered, tugging Amara's hand. "It's like a party." Miles clung to Nathan's side, his truck forgotten. "You play music here?" he asked. Nathan chuckled, lifting him onto a stool. "Not me, buddy, but tonight's special." He looked at Amara, his smile softening. "You'll see." The band struck up a slow, soulful tune, and Nathan led them to a reserved table, fairy lights twinkling above. Amara's heart raced, her kid's excitement infectious. Nathan leaned close, his voice low. "I've spent my life building walls, keeping people out. Then you came, spilling coffee, calling me out, showing me what family means." She laughed, her cheeks warm. "You're never letting that coffee thing go, are you?" "Never," he teased, his hand finding hers. "You gave me Miles, a son I didn't know I had. You gave me a reason to be better." He stood, the crowd quieting as he took the stage. Amara's breath caught, her kids leaning forward. Nathan grabbed the microphone, his voice steady. "Chicago, I'm not a speech guy, but tonight's different. There's a woman here who changed my life. Amara Coleman, you're my home." He pulled a velvet box from his pocket, dropping to one knee as the crowd gasped. "I love you, not just as Miles and Isabel's mom, but as the woman who makes me whole. Marry me. Let's be a family, forever." Amara's tears fell, her hand covering her mouth. Miles and Isabel clapped, shouting, "Say yes, Mommy!" The crowd cheered, the saxophone swelling. She stood, her legs shaky, and walked to him, her voice trembling. "You drive me crazy, Nathan Sterling, but I love you too." "Yes." The club erupted, and Nathan slid a diamond ring onto her finger, its sparkle catching the light. He pulled her into a kiss, deep and fierce, the world fading around them. Miles and Isabel rushed over, their arms wrapping around their parents, a family complete under the Chicago stars. Months later, Amara stood in the boardroom of Coleman Innovations, her father's legacy restored. She wore a sharp blazer, her hair in a sleek bun, her voice confident as she launched a new software line for underserved communities, honoring Marcus Coleman's vision. Sterling Enterprises, cleansed of Harpers' corruption, thrived under Nathan's steady hand, its focus shifting to sustainable projects. They'd moved to a cozy house in Oak Park, a haven of laughter and love for Miles and Isabel. One sunny afternoon, the family gathered in their backyard, a picnic spread on the grass. Miles raced Isabel to a tire swing, their giggles echoing. Amara leaned against Nathan, his arm around her, their wedding bands glinting in the light. "We made it," she whispered, her voice soft with wonder. He kissed her forehead, his smile warm. "We did, and we're just getting started." They watched the kids play, the city a distant hum, their love a quiet strength that had overcome every obstacle. Amara thought of her father, hoping he saw her now, proud of the daughter who'd fought for justice. She thought of Miles and Isabel, their star-shaped birthmarks a symbol of their shared past, and Nathan, the man who'd chosen love over fear. The sun dipped low, casting a golden glow over the yard. Miles and Isabel ran to them, collapsing in a heap of giggles. Amara and Nathan joined, lying on the grass, the kids' chatter a melody of joy. Chicago's skyline loomed faintly in the distance, a reminder of the city that tested them and the love that triumphed. This was their story, a tale of loss, redemption, and a family made whole, sparked by a spilled coffee and sealed with a vow to never let go. Wow, what a journey for Amara and Nathan. If you cried, laughed, or cheered, hit subscribe and tell us your favorite moment in the comments. Let's keep these stories coming.